Hello, hello. Today I'm working on my very first Inalti pattern. This is called the Seashell Saddle Bag. While I have not sewn any of Inalti's patterns, after looking over the pattern, reading it, and looking at some pictures in their Facebook group, I love the way her patterns are written and how they look, so I am so excited to try this out. Everything makes sense, the pattern's broken down really well, and it doesn't have like tons of pages, so it's not overwhelming. Great pattern as far as I can tell. I can't wait to see how everything comes together. I am making a few changes, just design changes to fit the materials that I want to use today, and I'll point those out as we go. Let's go ahead and jump right into it and start talking about the pieces we're going to need. The first thing we're going to talk about is the flap. This is the first thing I'm changing up. I wanted to use a panel for this flap. When I saw this flap, this design, this pattern, I knew it was perfect for this panel. Not only the shape of it, but also because, as you can see, I have some marks here because I have a huge magnetic snap that I'm wanting to use. I needed to find a pattern that had a shape that fit the panel perfectly and could still handle a big snap. This one's perfect. It looks great. So this is going to be the flap. In the pattern, though, she has a design feature that goes on the flap, so you should look at the pattern, look at her Facebook group, and see that, so you can kind of understand some of the other elements she has, but this is the way I'll be doing mine. So this is my exterior. It is a cotton canvas, as is everything in here, all cotton canvas. Everything I have interfaced with a medium weight interfacing, like a SF101, and then my exterior pieces, the flap and the front and main panels, I put a layer of foam on it. So this is the exterior, this is the lining. Now you can see this looks like it's upside down. That's simply because when you lift up the flap, I want it to be the right way. I did take the time, and this is something else different from the pattern. The pattern gives us this zipper overlay, but I didn't want it on the back of the bag because I didn't want to take away from this print. So I took this zipper overlay piece and I put it on the flap. So we're actually going to have a zipper pocket on the interior side of the flap. This panel, my exterior prints, my hardware, they're all from Natural Nerd. My lining pieces are going to be from Oh So Lovely. I'll have the links to both of those in my description, but I just wanted to point them out right up front in case I forgot. So those are my flap pieces. I also need zipper lining pieces. This is just a cotton canvas, no interfacing on these. Again, Oh So Lovely print. So that is the flap. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a front and back main. This is going to be the front piece. This is going to be the back piece. You can see that the back is just a little bit smaller than the front. That's because the flap is going to attach here, and then we have a separate piece to attach to the back to kind of help hide that flap. So this will be, the flap will be sandwiched in between these two pieces. For the side panels, we have this really cool design. I really like this. This is a piece of vinyl, but we're going to do a hidden connector here. And then on the back, this pattern had such a cool shape. We have this different way of interfacing. I'm excited to see how this works. We need to have this to be able to kind of hinge, to kind of crease on the side. So the way she has you do the interfacing leaves a gap in between the two pieces. We have the Decaville Heavy in the bottom. We have the Decaville Light in the front. Here is the line for our hidden connector placement. And this is going to be what is going to make our hidden connectors. We're going to attach D-rings to both of these, and that will be what will hold our strap. So that is your main exterior pieces. For my strap, I'm going to use a double layer strap. So one layer will be vinyl, one layer will be the cotton canvas. Let's just talk just a little bit how I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this strap off camera. It's just going to take a long time if I did it on camera. So you can see that both pieces are the same width, and I drew a line directly down the middle of both. On my vinyl, I will use glue, this Beacon 3-in-1 glue that I use for everything. I'm going to use it to glue down the sides, these raw edges, into that middle line. I do not need to leave a gap there, so I'll fold them to where they butt up against each other to the middle. You can use double-sided tape if you're someone who likes to use double-sided tape. For my cotton canvas strap part, I'm actually going to use a glue stick. I have the line in the middle, but I will put a layer of glue stick on both sides. I'll use the iron to press, and that heat will kind of make this stay enough until we get it attached. After we have both long edges of the cotton canvas and the vinyl straps pressed to the middle, then we will just put the wrong sides would of course be the sides with the edges, the seam exposed together, and then I will stitch down them. That will make my strap. It'll end up being a 1-inch strap. If you have any questions about how I do the strap, please let me know, and I could do a special video just on that strap, but I just didn't want to type everything for this video to make it too long. My lining piece is very unique. First off, it has a really cool shape. You can see the shape here. This is a little, it goes up at the top. We have a cutout right here on the side, and then a really wide shape at the bottom. But you can see that we have darts all along here. I love sewing a bag with darts. I feel like they're just a fun way to add a unique shape to a bag, so I'm really excited to see how this comes together. Also, you can see at the top here, I did draw a line. I drew this line on the exterior pieces as well. We are going to be dropping in this lining. It is my favorite way to finish a bag. So what we'll do is we will have the lines drawn just so at the end it'll be a little bit easier. So you don't have to draw them on there if you don't want to. I just find it easier to draw them on now. Also, some things we're going to need for this bag is we are going to need a zipper tape, my magnetic snap. Like I told you, I'm having this big one here. This is from Natural Nerd as well. She designs all of her hardware and she designs her prints. So she draws and figures everything out. So true artist there. So we have this magnetic snap. I have one zipper pull, and if you didn't recognize my panel, it is Mothman, and my zipper pull is Mothman. I live in West Virginia. Mothman is huge around here. We have Mothman festivals, a museum, everything. So I was so excited to see that represented in fabric, so I had to have it. My D-rings for my hidden connectors, 2 swivel hooks for my strap, an adjustable bar, and we have this tag. This is a tag from Jenna from Natural Nerd as well. The last thing I have, I'm so excited. I hope this fits. There is a chance this won't fit, but I want to use, and I don't know if you can see them very well. Let me go ahead and open them up. We have these adorable Chicago screw. Let me see if I can get it close to the camera. This is a Chicago screw. It is a Bigfoot and a Bigfoot foot, shall I say that? And so I'm hoping this will fit where my hidden connector will go through that vinyl. There's a chance it won't. If not, I'll find another place to use it, but that's what we're going to try to do. So those are the pieces, all the pieces that we need to get started with this bag. The first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sewing up my flap. So I'm going to pull out, this is my lining. There's my exterior. We want our 2 zipper pocket lining pieces, zipper tape, my zipper pull. I'm also going to take the tag and I'm just going to slip it under right here before I get started sewing it. So what I'll do is I have this zipper panel, just a little bit of glue tacked down on the edges just so it wouldn't be moving and shifting while we were going through all the pieces. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have it underneath this zipper overlay. I do not want it too far because I'm going to have to cut out this box to attach the zipper. So I want my tag to just be barely catching in there so that I can catch it on this first round of stitching. When we first sew around this zipper overlay, we're going to sew around the exterior perimeter, and that's when I want to catch this tag in that stitching. After we sew around that perimeter, we'll cut open everything so we can insert the zipper. So let's go ahead and start this pattern by sewing around our zipper overlay. I sewed all around the perimeter of the zipper overlay, about 1/8 of an inch away from that raw edge, and cut out the fabrics from behind it. As long as you can't see it from the box, you're okay, but maybe about 1/4 of an inch away from that stitching is probably the preferred way to do it. So we'll set that aside. I'm going to pull out my zipper pocket lining pieces and my zipper tape. I am going to sew this the way I do all of my zipper pockets. Have that lining piece right sides up. Lay that zipper tape right sides up, matching that raw edge. I always sew about 1/4 of an inch all the way across, and then I will flip it back and tack down the seam allowance at about 1/8 of an inch, just so it's a smooth open finish. Now that you have that part done, sewn and attached, you just separate the two. Push that seam allowance back down onto the wrong side of the lining, and then just tack it down at about 1/8 of an inch. This allows you to have a really flat finish so that you can install this zipper easily into that zipper overlay. I'm just going to complete those same steps on the other side. This time the only thing I also have to be careful of is making sure I match up the sides as well as that top piece. I cut one of my lining pieces shorter than the other. That is the one I want on the bottom. So for me, this is going to be the top, this is going to be the bottom. I'm going to add my zipper pull, and I want it to close to the left, and that's the way I will install it into the zipper overlay pocket. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my zipper with the zipper teeth right sides up and that pull closing to the left, and I'm just going to simply place it to where the zipper teeth are directly in the middle of my overlay piece. You can use pins, tape, glue, whatever you want at this point, but I don't use anything. I find that it works out pretty good if I just kind of sew it slow and keep everything in the middle. If your vinyl is stretchy, you'll have to be a little more careful because it will shift while you're sewing, so just be aware of that. But what I'll do is I'll just sew all the way around 1/8 of an inch on the inside of that perimeter of that box, and that'll attach the zipper to this flat piece. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over to the other side, pull that lining panel down, and I'm going to sew across those 3 sides, closing everything up so that this pocket is finished. I will be sewing it from the right side of the flap lining. I just pull it back, and then I get as close as I can. I will go a couple times over the zipper tape back and forth just to secure those stitches, and then continue around to the other side where I do the same on that piece of zipper tape as well. The next thing I need to do with my flap is I need to attach the exterior. Now, if you are using a prong magnetic snap, you'd want to go ahead and attach yours now. Since I'm using that big decorative piece, it's going to go through both of these, so I don't have to attach mine yet. So I'm going to go ahead and place these 2 pieces right sides together, add some clips, and then I'm going to just sew from the top all the way around to the other side. I'm going to leave this part completely open. This is where I'm going to go ahead and push the flap out, smooth out my seams and everything, poke out any corners. Before we sew this up, I want to show you a little something. When we're sewing with that seam allowance, we're going to be sewing right along like this. Let's say that's our seam. After we get through, the pattern designer tells us that we can cut out a portion to kind of help this part ease up, and then we can make snips all along here. If you feel like that will help you to get that sharp crease because it'll reduce some bulk, go ahead and do that step. That will just allow maybe a little bit more spreading of that to get that sharper point, so it won't be such a soft curve. So let's go ahead and put the lining and our exterior right sides together, clipping around, and then sewing with that seam allowance given the pattern, just those 3 sides. So I have the flap sewn together and clipped all the way around. Here is the way the back looks, or the inside of the flap, however you want to call it. So now it is time for me to make a choice. I still have to attach my snap. My snap does have to go through all layers. I've attached several snaps like this, and usually I do not top stitch and I leave this top open so I can reach in there and fool with it. But I thought that was the smartest way to do it, but I've had trouble sometimes doing that things kind of shift around, so whenever I'm doing it, I might not have the lining perfect. So the way I'm going to try to do it is this way. I'm going to hold it flat, top stitch all the way around, then I'm going to risk doing the snap, attaching it after everything's kind of stabilized and attached. If I have problems, of course, I could always pick out my threads. I am going to top stitch on camera, but I'm not installing this magnet on camera. It takes me a while. I'll go slow, and I want to make sure I do it right. I do have videos on how to attach Jenna's snaps specifically. If you're interested in watching that video, it is on my channel. But the way you do it is I go ahead, and you can see that I have the marks right there for where my magnetic snap, the prongs would go. But the main thing I need to do is I need to make holes for this plate, because I have screws that I have to screw in to this. This will be the front, this will be the back. And so I need to make for sure that I have openings so those screws can fit through. The way I do that is I mark those openings, and after I have them marked, I use this press and I just poke the 4 holes through, and then I take the time to make for sure. I start out with the smallest opening, and then I go up until I just get it to clear without any loose threads showing through. I don't want too big of a hole, or maybe I should say a bigger hole than necessary. After I get that, then I'll add the screws and put it in there. It takes a little bit of time, but it is well worth it in my opinion. So let's go ahead and top stitch all around, even closing up the top, and then I will go off camera to attach my magnetic snap. I have my magnetic snap attached. Everything went well. I got very lucky. I just, look how close that got. That's just luck there, because I did not plan that. Oversight on my part, but I almost messed up there. But anyway, everything worked out perfect, thankfully. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach my flap to the back. So pull out your back exterior, pull out that little top piece you have. And what we want to do is we want to place this flap wrong sides up so that the exteriors are right sides together of this flap. You definitely want to take the time to center it, but you're going to match it up there at that top edge. And then we're going to baste this flap into place. After we do that, we will take our top piece. You can see this line all the way across. I know there's 2 lines on there, but one is the proper line. Make sure you draw yours on there. It'll just make things easier for you whenever we fold it down to drop in this lining. So the pattern tells you exactly how far to fold down on that piece. But what we'll do is after we've basted this piece on, we will flip this piece down and add it to it with the full seam allowance. So there'll be kind of like a sandwich for the flap, and then we will top stitch it after that. So let's go ahead first and take the time to make sure we get the flap centered properly. Once you have that flap centered, then you're just going to make sure you have those top raw edges matched up, or the long edges I should say, and then just go across with a basting stitch. After we have that basted on, let's go ahead and orientate our top piece here, flip it down, and sew it across with the full seam allowance this time. I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning, but this top piece here, it has a separate pattern piece for the interfacing, or stabilizer I should say. I used Decaville Light, whereas I used foam on everything else, just because I knew I'd be folding different things, and I just felt like that'd be a little bit easier to have some stability instead of a lot of bulk there. So now what I do is I am going to flip all this up. And when I flip it up, my seam allowance is naturally going to go down. And then I'm going to top stitch all along this edge on the exterior piece. We're not top stitching on the flap, just on our exterior. So for me, this section is already done and it looks gorgeous. I love it. Now is the part that's a little bit scary for me. I have to attach the other side of that magnetic snap onto the front. I have used patterns where it hasn't fit properly, and I've gotten kind of skittish about attaching a snap until the very end. That's why lots of times I use riveted snaps so that I can do it at the end and don't have any problems. However, with that magnetic snap I want to use, I have to do it now. I looked in the group even to make for sure no one had problems. Everyone has attached the snap, use this pattern without any problems that I can see, so I'm going to have to just have a lot of faith that the pattern designer has the proper measurements. I used it from the pattern pieces, and so I checked everything, double checked to make sure everything looked good. It does. So I'm going to go off camera, attach this magnetic snap here to my front, and then we will continue on with sewing up the bag. I got my magnetic snap on the front and I'm going to set it aside. It is time to work on those hidden connectors. I'm going to zoom my camera in because I feel like hidden connectors are a tricky thing, and I looked over the pattern and she does a wonderful job of giving an instruction how to do it. So I want to show you exactly how she tells us to do it so that you can feel a little more comfortable if you've not used hidden connectors before already in a pattern. So I'm going to get close so you can see everything kind of close up. The first thing is I do have stabilizer on the back of my vinyl. I do have the pattern placement already transferred. I went ahead and used my scalpel to cut a slit for this connector. And on my connector, I drew a line down the center. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and top stitch down both sides of this connector. Only a small piece of your connector is actually going to show. So I'm just folding those raw edges in. If you're someone who likes to use tape, definitely feel free to do that. I'm just going to sew from the wrong side. It won't bother me a bit to do that. My top stitching looks the same either way. I'm just doing 1/8 of an inch. Now that you have that top stitch, you are going to have this gusset piece wrong sides up. Go ahead and turn your connector piece right sides up. We're going to slip it through just like that. If your slit is not big enough, go ahead and make it a little bit larger. I think I got mine pretty perfect. Yep, I do. Okay, this is what it looks like so far. The pattern, I'm going to have it about halfway through, but the pattern actually gives you even a measurement as to how far you should have, how much you should have hanging over, which is great, especially for your first time and you're a little nervous. Now what you're going to do is you're going to flip this gusset piece over. So what you should be looking at is the right side of your gusset, the wrong side of your connector. We're going to sew, let me get my stiletto out to show you. We're going to sew right here, right above that opening, but on the connector. We are not sewing on our gusset, we are sewing on our connector. So we will sew just on the connector. We'll make sure none of our stitches go on the gusset because these stitches need to stay hidden. So I'm going to back stitch on both times, but just sewing right there. Just get as close as you can on the connector without being on the gusset. So those stitches are there. What I do is I take my D-ring then and I just simply slide it on, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that free edge and now I'm going to start pushing it through that opening that I had the wrong sides through. So we're just slipping it through there. Yep, it's going. So you can see I'm just pushing it through. I'm going to flip this over so I can see and grab it. What's going to happen is when you start pushing it through, this little piece of your gusset is going to be pushing out. That's fine. You want it to do that. I am going to go ahead and pull that down. You pull it down to about the size you want. You can see just a very small part of your top stitching does show. I really want this part of my gusset to be folded, so what I'm going to do is get it to have the raw edge just like this. See this raw edge? I'm going to use my stiletto again. This raw edge right here is what we're going to sew. This will make it look like a finished edge and will also secure everything on the gusset. So again, we're just going to sew the width of that, and I'm going to raise up my foot a little bit because it's a little thick here. So we are only going to sew right there on that gusset piece the width of the connector. We're going through all the pieces here. Now this part makes me always a little nervous because my D-ring is right there. So I go really slow, like I'll just barely push my foot down. If you want a hand crank, you can. But you would not want to go really fast here. You can see me back stitching. Because if you do hit that hardware by accident, if you're going fast, it could cause your needle to break. But if you're going slow, it'll just kind of bump against it and stop. Okay, now I got that attached. Let's go ahead and get those threads out of the way. And we're going to look from my right sides, and you can see how that hidden connector looks. You do not have to put a rivet, but as you know, I have those really fancy Chicago screws, so I definitely want to do it there. I'm going to use my marking tool here, and I'm just going to put a little mark there in the center, low enough down so that it won't be, you know, because mine's a foot, so I don't want it too close. And I'm going to get out my hole punch. And just smush everything in. I'm going through all these layers. Going to stick that post through. It'll take some effort, I do believe. Yep, it's going. It is going. If you have a rivet, this wouldn't be quite as challenging, but it also wouldn't be as cute either. So now I have that really nice opening there. What I want to do is I want to take the back of that Chicago screw and start getting it in there. So I'm just fitting that down. Let me make sure I'm in frame. And I'm just kind of screwing and tightening it down. I'm tightening it a little bit, and then I'll have to flip over to make sure it's not twisting it, making sure that's staying the way I want. I'm going to shift it just a little bit. And now that I've got it kind of started, I'll use my thumb to hold that in place. And you can see it just tightens really easily. It just screws right in. But look at that adorable hidden connector. It's great. Love it. I went ahead and did my other hidden connector off camera. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both of these. You'll have to place them right sides together. And down at the bottom, which is the wider edge, the wider side, you're going to place them right sides together, and you're going to go ahead and sew with the seam allowance given in the pattern to connect these two pieces. Once you get those two pieces connected, go ahead and open them up, and let's top stitch 1/8 of an inch away down both sides of that seam. I'm going to do this from the wrong side, but you can do it from whichever side you feel most comfortable with. Trim up your threads, and then your gusset is complete, and we'll set this aside. It's time to work on our lining. First thing we'll do is we're going to start with these cutouts right here on the side. So that's the first pleat we're going to do. We're going to fold this right sides together, and then we're just going to sew with the seam allowance given in the pattern. What it is best to do is to start at the bottom and work your way down, just because it's a little tricky, or a little trickier to start at the top, because you're actually going to be sewing a lot longer than you think you're going to be sewing. So start down here, lock in your stitches, And then you're just going to keep going. So here's where that cutout ends, but you're just going to keep continuing on with that seam allowance until you run out of room. And then you lock in your stitches. So even though the cut ends there, your little cutout, you kept stitching until all the way here. So we're going to trim that down, maybe about half. And then you'll poke that out, and that's your first dart. You'll repeat that on the second side and then also on the other cutouts on your other lining piece. But before we do all of that, let's look at the other darts. The other darts are just drawn on there and they are not cut out. So what you'll do is you'll take this line and you're going to fold it to its right sides together. Now if you fold it properly and if you have them drawn properly, it'll end in that point there. So let's go ahead and I'm going to again sew this from the bottom. You don't have to, but that's just the way I feel is best. You put your needle down or your foot down directly on that line. You are going to start sewing directly on that line, back stitch, and then continue following that line until it ends. Now I'm not going to cut this seam allowance because it's a very small seam. It's going to be a very small dart. But I'm going to complete that for all the other darts at the bottom of this lining piece as well as the other darts for the other lining panel. After we get all of those sewn, then we will come back and put this together. So don't trim the seam allowance on the darts you draw. Do trim that seam allowance on the cutout dart pieces. So this is the way this lining will look once you get all your pleats sewn. It's adorable. It looks like a little bowl. I love just this by itself. I'm falling more and more in love with this pattern as we go. Go ahead and grab out your second one. Hopefully you've already done that. And so the designer does tell us to be like really careful when sewing these darts because we need to match them up. We're going to nest the seam so one seam will go one way, one will go the other. I'm sure I did not get mine sewn perfectly, so it's okay, I'll make it work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by matching up here at the top and just hope for the best. So we're going to put this right sides together, clip around. You can see that I already have the line drawn like the pattern tells me to do. That is going to help me for the next steps whenever we drop in the lining. Okay, my first darts line up great. I'm going to shift those seams so they're going in opposite directions and put a clip there. Okay, second darts looks great too. I am 2 for however many we have on this. I'm feeling very thankful right now. I'm just matching these up and they are fitting wonderfully. I know this is not a credit to my excellent sewing skills. It's just the pattern. No credit taken, but this is matching up perfectly. Wow, I thoroughly did not expect it to match up so wonderfully. Some of the darts are wanting to lay a certain way and I'm just kind of letting them lay that way. I'm not kind of forcing them to switch if they're wanting to go a certain way. I guess it's okay if they're going like not all of the darts on one side are going the same way. I'm assuming it's okay, but if not, oh well, you'll learn from me. So I'm down to that last one. Again, it looks great. Can't believe all those matched up so nicely. So you can see that I had like kind of one, I don't know how to explain it, but one was like in and one curve was out. That's the way I'm going to sew it too. So it just makes more sense for me to do it this way. I'm going to use the seam allowance from the pattern. I'm going to start here at the top. This lining fit perfectly and I cannot believe it. So I'm going to start here at the top, lock in these stitches of course, and then just go all around going slow, making sure that my seams are staying the way I want them to stay, the way I had them clipped, that alternating nesting way, and I'm just going to continue around this lining. Whether you like my choice of fabrics or not, You gotta buy the pattern just for the shape and the way everything fits. I mean, that's just unbelievable. I did not expect that. Look at that lining, how open it is. Just a very fun sew. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold this raw edge down to that line I drew all the way around this lining. I'm going to leave my lining wrong sides out. That is how I'm going to drop it into that exterior, because my exterior will be right sides out. And this is how the inside of my bag will look. Now the pattern does tell us to trim down those seams on the sides around the curves. I might do that, I might not, I don't know. It doesn't look too bad, but I can see where it might create some unnecessary bulk. Okay, so I have that all clipped down. This is how it looks. I just cannot get over how perfectly this sewed up and how well it looks. I'm proud of myself. So now we've got the gusset. I am nervous, I'm gonna admit that, but like, I really want that shape to work out. Everything looks good. Her concept I know makes sense, so I've just got to go for it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make sure, I don't think I have it marked my center. I can tell where the center is because I have my magnetic snap there. So I'm just going to come down from that and make a little mark. And that of course is where the seam is going to go. So I'm going to put that seam, and I'm working with my front. So I'm matching my front and that gusset right sides together, starting at that center mark. Let's just do a clip or two around that center mark, and then we're going to pull this up to the top and start easing it in all the way around. It's funny how whenever a bag is going together really well, how it's almost harder because it's like it looks so perfect you do not want to mess up at the end because everything's looking so good, you know? So I'm having just a slight bit of nerves about I'm going to mess it up here at these last few steps. So now that I have the top clipped, I'm just going to continue to clip around. And when we get to this spot here, this is the part that I really want to make sure gets that pivot spot. And so I'm going to definitely clip a little bit extra right around that pivoting spot. I mean, it's fitting great. I have to admit, everything is fitting great. As you can see, it's just poking perfectly, and it's just wanting to do the exact same thing. I see that I have my Decaville Heavies up probably a little too high, but it's still pivoting perfectly. If it's giving me any grief, I could shift that down. I think I will shift it just a shade down. Okay, I will probably use my hemostats and make sure I hold it right there in that corner. That corner is going to be very important to me because it's that shape that I'm wanting with this pattern. It's what drew me to the pattern. Okay, so I have it clipped, and the designer tells us that we may even want to clip into the gusset when we're sewing this to make sure it pivots properly. So I get that. I'm going to kind of start sewing. I'm starting here at the top. Right now I'm just going down straight, and that line we drew, that's our pivot spot. So I'm kind of watching. I think they wanted, I think I was supposed to sew with this gusset side up so I could see that pivot line, because right there's the pivot. I'm going to back stitch there. I'm definitely going to do a sharp pivot, but I think I was supposed to be able to see that a little bit better. I'm going to flip it around, and I definitely can see that it was going to be way easier to sew it this way, just so I can make sure I get that correct way to do it. So definitely sew it with your main panel on the bed of your machine. Okay, yeah, 100% sew it the right way. That does so much better. I do have some issues on this side. Let's poke it out and let's see how bad they look before I continue on. I may need to fix this before I go on to the back. So this side looks great. Look how gorgeous that is, but look at this side. So I'm definitely going to fix that right there. I'm not comfortable with that. I even snipped that side because I knew I was having some trouble. So I'm going to flip this out. And so you can see what my problem is. Look there, it's not right. So I started it wrong to begin with, and that's what got me messed up. And it's okay, let's try that again, going a little more slow, being a little more careful with that startup. Okay, let's see how did it that time. Did I get it any better? Ha, perfect. Okay, good deal, good deal. I'll have to trim up my seams and everything out of the way, but that is much better. So, just so you know, make sure that you have your starts and your stops really good lined up there at the top. Pivot where that line is that you drew. That is your pivot point, and you can see that's where I pivoted there. I cut a little bit too low because that is where I messed up the first time. But that pivot, that line is where you pivot. That's perfect. Okay, so we're going to attach the exterior the same way to the gusset, taking care, going slow with everything. Just make sure you're not sewing your flap in there, which you shouldn't. You should have enough room to keep your flap completely out of your seam allowance. And then we will come back to finish up the bag. This bag looks so good. I cannot get over how gorgeous that shape is. I'm seriously in love. I think this is my new favorite pattern. Just love how quick it comes together. That shape, I feel like it's unique. I just feel like it's just, I don't know, it's just fun. So what I did was I went ahead and turned my exterior right sides out. I did clip or trim the seams on this one just because there's vinyl and I felt like it was a little too bulky. So I trimmed the seams on the exterior, but I didn't on the lining. Hopefully I won't need to. I did fold down the raw edges, the line I drew on the exterior and on the lining. Now I did not put any pockets at all on the lining. Just so you know, the pattern does come with details on how to put a slip pocket and a zipper pocket. I just didn't want it. I just wanted to kind of focus on what I was doing on the exterior, really. So now what I want to do is I'm just going to slip this in here. This should fit fine. If it doesn't, the good thing is we would just adjust the seam allowance. So since our exterior and lining are constructed differently, we're not so much matching up the seams as we are putting that center, the side seam on the lining. We're going to put it in the center of that little gusset. So what I want to do is I want to take the time to go around and match that up and clip everything around. I want my lining to just be slightly lower than that exterior, not anything more than like a 1/16 of an inch. I just don't want to see that lining whenever I look at the outside of the bag. I'm going to switch my clips. I see that those plastic ones are already leaving some indentions there on the vinyl, so I'm just going to switch on that gusset part to the rubberized clips, but the rest of it I'll just use these little plastic ones. So go around clipping everything, and then after I get it all clipped, I'll just start sewing it. And this is just considered a top stitch, even though we're connecting the pieces. So you'll just go 1/8 of an inch all the way around. I'm going to sew it from the lining side, so my exterior will be against the bed of my machine. Of course, if you're uncomfortable with that, you could definitely turn it around and do it the opposite way. It's just, I feel like it'll be fine to do it this way. Look at how great that is fitting. Very open. We can see in there clearly. Great fit. So now let's just go ahead and sew all around, taking our time to try to get the best top stitch possible. We do not want to mess up now that we worked this hard on the bag. We'll keep our flap out of the way, of course. We do not need it in our top stitching. We're going to slide it under just like this, pushing that top out of the way. And just focusing on the small spot that's right under the needle. Try to keep your lining just a smidge underneath the exterior. I'm going to leave my top thread the way it is. It's going to be a white on a dark fabric, but that's okay. I'll just try to go slow and make sure I don't mess up too bad. So my bag is completely done. I love, love, love this shape. Now I do have to do quite a bit of pressing on my flap. Not worried about that. I can get that. I am a little frustrated that I did not take into consideration this part. Now, is that a big deal? Nope, sure is not. Would have liked to have done it differently, but if I would have, it would have probably not worked with that flap, that magnetic snap I wanted to put on, so it's okay. But look at that shape. Look at those adorable connectors. The back, everything's perfect. I am not someone who uses a lot of vinyl, and I really don't make a lot of structured bags. So this is a big step out of my comfort zone, and I could not be happier with the way it works. I highly recommend this pattern. I am definitely going to be checking out her other patterns and probably will sew another one. This was fun. The pattern was well written. Everything fit perfectly. I'm impressed. So this is the Seashell saddle bag from Inalti Designs. My exterior fabric, the panel, the snap, the Chicago screws, all of those are from Natural Nerd. The inside is from Oh So Lovely. I will have the links for all of those in my description. And thank you guys for taking a risk with me, trying out a new pattern, a new designer, and I hope that today in your sewing room, you take a risk too and you try out a new designer and let me know of a designer that you like, that you maybe think other people should know about, or one that you haven't seen a video on, or just one that you want to introduce to the sewing community. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.